I said at a later stage, and I think that's still the case, I have a love-hate relationship with meditation. And then a friend of mine who is a frequent meditator, the same person that introduced me to the magic truffles, he said, "Well, does not everybody have a hate love relationship with meditation? Because it's not a full bliss from start to end. It can be very blissful, but it can be very frustrating uh, uh, and it can also make you realize how little you know about how to be calm because you observe your not calm mind and all the
Your
thoughts that
monkey
are
mind.
running
Yeah.
around. Yeah, your monkey mind. So once you start interacting and observing your monkey mind, you only realize how far away you are from that calm state. That
Hey, Maarten.
I
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Kundalini Awakening podcast. This is our fourth episode, and I'm very happy to uh, have you here on this chat because you're like a guy from real kind of tech. We had some conversations because are doing AI. You're consulting in the AI world, so and but you're also going spiritual. Tell us, uh, what are you doing with the Kundalini Yoga Club, Martin?
Well, actually, I discovered the club soon after I realized that I wanted to do Kundalini yoga. This was in the midst of the first lockdown of the pandemic, so there were not much yoga classes going on, and I wanted to yeah, investigate the possibilities of Kundalini yoga. And then I bumped into one of these blog posts of Jasper, which guided me to his website. And then I found that there was a wide range of kriyas available through the Kundalini Yoga Club. And also at the same time, I read in his ebook that it would be advisable to do the Kundalini Yoga every morning. So I thought, well, let's get it started because I was pretty sure that I wanted to take a deep dive into this practice, and I followed the main suggestions that Jasper provided instantly. So I became a member of the yoga club. I started easily, I must say, because I read something about the importance of breath work, and I didn't have any experience with yoga whatsoever, whether it was Kundalini yoga or any other form of yoga. So instead of doing my first 40 days from start, I decided to start with 40 days of only breath work, and it would also limit the amount of time I needed to take in the morning because I needed to get used to rising up earlier. And instead of taking the full hour of a kriya and a mantra from scratch, I decided to just go half an hour earlier and do some breathwork exercises. And that was my first 40 days. And
Why
after
40
that,
days? Why 40 days?
well, also because it was advised to do so. So I was completely blank about the whole tradition and all the rituals or guidelines that come with it. So anything that was suggested by Jasper through all the different information outlets around the Kundalini Yoga Club, I just absorbed and took that for granted. So I thought, if you do it on a daily basis, and then you take a particular practice for 40 days, that resonated with me. I didn't have any obligations, or I didn't have any negative ideas about that. So I just thought, okay, that will be my practice as well.
Yeah, those 40 days are actually a time where you sink in or you start to break open a pattern. Um,
Mm,
when I come from the Vietnamese background, when somebody would die, then for 40 days you would wear a little bit of a black cloth on your shirt so that you would never forget this person.
Mm.
So 40 days comes back in many traditions as one of the it's the, I think the first step to to break a pattern
Mm.
or to install a pattern. But it's the lightest because there's also 90 days and then you go for a whole year or 1,000 days, right? So the 40 days are good stuff. Okay, so you went into the club, you discovered the club, and somehow you just open minded, blank, no judgment, read the book, followed the thing, right? And you
Yeah.
start your journey. And that was how many years ago?
So that was halfway 2020, so 3.5 years.
Okay. Now I'm curious before that. What led
Hmm.
uh, what led Maarten um, on the search for something, and how did he come to the Kundalini?
Yeah, well, that's a quite long trajectory. Maybe it's good to start with the initial paradigm or idea I had about the world, which I sometimes call like a conventional modern Western worldview, where there is no such thing as a God, and there's no such thing as magical events that can happen that cannot be explained by science. Um, in terms of I followed one philosophy course during my studies, and I realized I was a philosophical materialist. It not to be mixed up with economic materialist, but a philosophical materialist means that your consciousness derives from the physical composition of your brain, and I fully adhere to that worldview. So as well as
Wait. Before, can I
all
just
right.
jump in? For my understanding, does that resonate with what I see, I believe, and if I don't see it, I don't believe it? Is that something
Yeah,
like that?
definitely. Yeah, that's also I would fully subscribe that statement until a few years ago, and I must
Okay.
say I was in an environment both in terms of my family, my upbringing. So my parents and my brother and sister, they had the same beliefs about the world, as well as most of my friends. We had the odd religious person here and there who was still going to church, but other than that, I think most of the people around me, how they perceived the world was quite similar to how I perceived the world. And anybody who had a different worldview, whether it was like a Christian traditional religion view or more spiritual view, me personally, as well as many people around me, thought they were just crazy and they hadn't captured reality yet. But that's how I started. So I was quite in the opposite corner as the route where Kundalini yoga brings you. So there happened quite a few things in between before I decided I go full into Kundalini yoga, as I decided 3.5 years ago.
So I'm curious, what made you realize I need to find something else?
Yeah, I think it was a stepwise approach. My partner, we reflected on it, my partner and me, how this transition came about, and she pinpointed an event a bit over 10 years ago now, where I stopped drinking alcohol from one day to the other. I was drinking quite heavily, not in a problematic way, but in a way that I was definitely dependent on it. And I read a book about quitting smoking, and I got that halfway the book, but the book said you must read the full book. So I read the full book, and the second half of the book I had time to reflect on not my relationship with nicotine, because I sorted that out. I decided to quit smoking straight away, and throughout the book I realized that the same dynamic which was described between yourself and the nicotine also applied to myself and the alcohol. So I decided to also quit alcohol at the same time. And in hindsight, my partner says that was basically, I think, your first act of resistance against this conventional worldview, although it didn't have any philosophical or implications about how I viewed reality. But she said that maybe that started something, some change. And my own reflection was a bit different, because I think 1 or 2 years down the line from that moment, a friend of mine suggested to do magic truffles. I didn't really know what that was about when I started it, but I was open to anything basically. So I thought, well, let's make some fun and use the truffles. And I we used it, I think, 3 times over the course of a year or so. And I had some profound insights about how you can look to reality from a different lens. And I realized that during those trips, we referred to common day reality as reality, because we didn't believe anymore, at least during the immersion of the trip, that that was the only way to look at reality. And the way we looked at reality from this immersed state felt as much real, or maybe even realer, than the conventional reality. So I think that broke the first crack in my perception about what reality was about. And it made me realize that there's different ways that you can look at reality, and one way is not more genuine than the other. And still, that didn't really change things significantly, but it was a first step towards being open to different worldviews about reality. And then I think it was around the same time when my partner bought a magazine of happiness. And there was a small booklet included in that particular feature, which which was a capture of the book The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle. And it was just lying around in our living room. And I thought, well, there's something to read, so let's start reading it. And I was really puzzled by the content. It intrigued me, but I didn't understand much of it. I would say 80% just flew over my head, and 20% was like, okay, this is interesting, but I don't really get it. And I realized I was so much intrigued by it that a few months later, I went on a hiking trail for a few days by myself. And I decided to bring the book, so that maybe during a time when I was with myself and I was at ease and at peace with myself, I could capture more of the content. So I reread the small booklet a few months later. I never reread stuff, so somehow it intrigued me. And then I started to reread it, and again, I didn't get much of it, but somehow it stuck to me, because later, somehow it intrigued me to start meditating, exploring some first steps on the spiritual path. This.
What really intrigued you? I understand the books of Eckhart Tolle. I haven't read many, but a few. And you're
Mhm.
right. It's a it's a different nut to crack, right? It's a
Yeah,
different view on reality. But can you remember back, like, what pulled you back in? What
I
pulled you
think
to
by the
pull through? How did you feel that? Because
yeah, I
you
think
must have
by the
received some kind
time.
of a
Yeah.
signal or something, and I'm just curious, what was that?
I think by the time, I didn't really know what intrigued me about it, because it was also fake. But maybe in hindsight, I can now see that Eckhart Tolle, in describing the different state that you can achieve, the different way you can look at reality, comes with peace, inner peace, and inner calmness. And I think that that is the part that intrigued me, because as many people, I was always longing for peace of mind or a peaceful state. And apparently, this strange way of having an alternative perception of the world could lead to this deep, calm state. And I think that I was looking for that somehow, because normal everyday life can be quite uh, well stringent, and I mean, you have to be always on and performing, and at the same time, with this conventional worldview that I just described, there is not really such a thing as a purpose of life. So you just go on and try to make as much fun as possible, but at the same time, there is not much balance in the way I perceive my life that would lead me to a relaxed and calm state. And this was one of the promises in Eckhart Tolle's book, and I think that somehow intrigued me. Like, okay, if this is the way that you can get to a calm state, I might be interested to dive a bit deeper.
So you were looking a way out of the rat race.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Without realizing I was in a rat race, because as far as I was concerned, this was just how life was supposed to be lived.
And later, in hindsight, you realize you were in a rat race, right?
Yeah, I still am for most part of my life, but at least I have now discovered piece by piece that there is an alternative way to relate yourself against life.
Okay, so you start meditation. Tell us, what did meditation bring you?
Um, well, I said at a later stage, and I think that's still the case, I have a love-hate relationship with meditation. And then a friend of mine who is a frequent meditator, the same person that introduced me to the magic truffles, he said, "Well, does not everybody have a hate love relationship with meditation? Because it's not a full bliss from start to end. It can be very blissful, but it can be very frustrating, uh, uh, and it can also make you realize how little you know about how to be calm, because you observe your not calm mind and all the
Your
thoughts that
monkey
are
mind,
running
yeah.
around. Yeah, your monkey mind. So once you start interacting and observing your monkey mind, you only realize how far away you are from that calm state that Eckhart Tolle so nicely described. So,
Frustrating, isn't it?
oh, definitely, yeah. So I don't think the thing was that the one example I had about spiritual journey was that of that friend of mine who was very experienced already in meditation. He went to these 10-day Vipassana retreats, and at a later stage he went for I think 6 or 7 weeks to Burma for full meditation experience. So I thought, if I ever want to walk this way towards this peacefulness and calmness, the meditation is the way to go. And at the same time, when I started meditation, I was like, okay, doing this for 10 minutes twice a day is okay, but other than that, I don't I don't really see myself going deeper into this route. But I as far as I knew, this was the only way, because I didn't have any reference or clue about the different paths you can walk in the spiritual journey. So I got stuck there a bit, and I actually stopped meditating after a year, maybe 1.5 years or so. It gradually faded out. I'm pretty sure that most listeners will recognize setting up a practice, and then after a while you realize you're not doing the practice anymore and you actually forgot how it slipped away. I think that's how it went with me in meditation. um, so then I was back at my conventional life again, and then there was another event. A friend of mine started doing some ayahuasca ceremonies, so another plant medicine entered my life when she asked me, or maybe I asked her. I don't really know how that came about, but in the end, we decided that I would join her during one of these ceremonies. So it was a full weekend ceremony with 2 nights of drinking the plant medicine. And that's that small crack that was created during the previous experiences a few years earlier, that really cracked open by then, because the immersion of this alternative point of view towards reality was so strong and so profound, and it also came with a lot of emotions and physical sensations. In my case, also very negative emotions, where I really got stuck into some kind of negative loophole. But during the ceremony, I was able to climb out of that dark place again, and also that whole experience somehow um, gave me a more profound feeling that this little itch that was created should not be ignored anymore.
Did you know that that was Kundalini or not?
No, no, I didn't know about Kundalini before. I only
How was it
got.
explained to you then? Because I think a lot of people um, have heard of ayahuasca, or at least are intrigued by plant
Mhm.
medicine, right? So, how did you perceive that session? What happened? How did you explain it to your rational mind?
Um, I had difficulties doing that because from my conventional worldview, there were a lot of things that happened during the ceremony that could not be explained. So I already had issues with like just facing the experiences, not only for myself but also this was a group ceremony, so there were other participants with their stories, which also had oddities in the stories, which I also experienced and witnessed during the ceremony. So there were a lot of question marks around it, but I already knew it would probably be a very vague and unexplainable experience. So I didn't really bother explaining it all the way. The one positive thing that I took is that although I went through a very deep valley during the experience, I climbed out of the valley myself because during the ceremony there was no interaction allowed with others. And the facilitators, the shamans, they also um, supported you in such a way that they would stimulate you to deal with everything that comes up yourself instead of trying to help you out. So it was just me who climbed out of that dark place during the ceremony, and I felt significantly lighter as a being after the ceremony. I compared it as if there was a lot of dirt, like a big trunk of dirt, uh, and part of it, like the level of how high the dirt came in how I would perceive difficulties in life, that was decreased afterwards, and that remained the case. So I had been able to let go of some of the dirt that I was dragging along with me, and that was I think the most significant difference I recalled, and that I was also sort of kind of able to explain. So apparently, I thought if you are going through such a ceremony, you are able to let go of some of the load that you carry along with you in your life.
Give me now we're very conceptual. Right? Let's get into
Mhm.
some detail, if you don't mind. A lot of people could not grasp this. I understand what you're saying, but for somebody who hasn't gone into the spiritual road path, but maybe has a reason why they're listening to this podcast,
Mhm.
right? So they're interested, but let's make it practical. Can you give us an example of what happened in that session where you because you're saying after one weekend the mud of life become less.
Yeah,
How the heck is that possible? Probably somebody's asking.
yeah. I I think what maybe I still recall quite specifically how I came out of this dark place. So at a certain moment in time, and I think it lasted for around 2 hours or so, there was only negativity, even to
Such
a
as?
point.
Such as?
So I had a physical pain in my chest, which was very intense. It was like something stabbing in my chest, and I got convinced of the idea that for the rest of my life, this pain would not go away anymore. So I thought, apparently, this is for me the effect of drinking the medicine. The pain started in my chest or a bit below, actually around the solar plexus, and it got intense, and I was really like craving from pain. And I thought, okay, now I inflicted this on myself. Apparently, from now on, I have to bear this pain. And that was the state of mind I was in. And at the same time, I felt like, okay, so I was 35 at the time, and I thought, well, maybe I have another 40 years or so to live. So let's face it, there will be 40 years of intense pain, and I will have to wait and go through it. So that was the darkness of the place I was in. There was no perspective whatsoever on anything becoming better.
Mm.
Like, I have never been in a very deep depression, but I could imagine it could feel similar. That the only perspective about the future you have is just negativity, and in my case, combined with physical pain. And then, after being there for quite a while and feeling quite miserable about it, obviously, um, there were like glimpses of positivity. Like, hey, maybe the pain is a little bit less intense now than it just was. Or I could capture something in the room around me which didn't make me very miserable. I could see something which I liked, or I could hear a phrase of the music that I thought, well, this is not negative. This is something positive. Because also the music in general became very negative and aggressive towards me, at least in my perception. But after a while, some positive things came up, and I started to focus on it, and I realized the more I focused on the positive glimpses, the bigger they became. And when I lost them again, I was back in this pool of dire negativity. And again, when some glimpse of positivity came around and I started to focus on it, it grew again, until maybe an hour later or so. So that was then 3 hours down the line. The positivity and the negativity were like balancing each other out. There were phases of positivity, they became bigger. I became more positive. I had positive ideas about how the future could look like. It would last for 5 to 10 minutes, and then it would slide away, and I started feeling down again. And this cycle of positive and negativity kept transforming into towards more positivity and less negativity. And that's how I sort of scrambled out of this dark hole, by focusing on the positivity. So the thing that I took, and I also, of course, during these sessions, you're always recommended to bring pen and paper to write important stuff down. And I recall I only wrote 2 sentences down from that night. And one of the sentences was very straightforward: turn to the light. Because there was darkness on the one side and there was light on the other side. And apparently, if I was able to turn to the light, I could, I mean, there was a positive reinforcement bringing me to more positivity and more light. And I definitely needed that, because I was climbing out of such a dark place. So I started maybe experiencing the positive relationship between your mental intentions and the feedback that arrives from it. And I think that was quite a substantial lesson, that if you are in a dark place, once you focus on the light, it's easier to climb out of it. And I must say, it has been almost 5 years since then, and I could not say that I'm never in a dark place anymore. But it's definitely a lesson that I took, and also sort of, for me, explained how this bag of dirt that I carry along could have been diminished, because the whole process of going through such a deep valley and climbing out of it, and the realization that came from it, just made, yeah, it felt like a gentle breeze into my life. And it also opened me up for,
Air, you got more air, you got more space, right?
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Like you relieved yourself with something really heavy, right? Yeah. So that whole story, that what you found, brings me back to one principle: whatever you give attention, it grows.
Oh yeah, that's definitely something that I experienced there.
Yeah, like a handful of seeds, you pick the seed, you give it water, it grows.
Yeah.
But we need to be conscious which seed we want to grow. Whether it's the seed of drinking alcohol, the seed of eating meat, the seed of having sex, or the seed of listening to my pains and letting it go. It's you get better at it. or meditation.
Yeah,
So cool. So that was the lesson. Okay, you
yeah,
came out of it, and then
yeah. Then I think besides the perception that I felt less burden, there was not much of a change going on. I think it took around half a year before that change materialized, because I had read a poem previously, and one of the sentences in that poem was, "I have never been born." And I think it's part of this concept that your identity is different than just the bodily identity that you have during this life, but it's more related to the wider conscious experience. I didn't realize that at the moment, because I didn't have the language to describe that or believe it, for that matter. But I was intrigued by this sentence, "I've never been born." The poem also reflected on "I will never die." That's like the other side of the same coin, but that
what?
seemed a bit cheesy to me to dive into that concept, because the promise of never dying, I mean, it's an interesting promise, but it can also be uh, yeah, how do you say that? It can also like inflict a wrong motivation to appreciate that different worldview. At least in my sense, I was a bit uh, um, sensitive about being too fond of the concept of never dying. I think it's not the right motivation for people to get on whatever spiritual path to search for the eternal life. Although it might be a consequence that you don't feel too much identified anymore with your bodily life and experience. But if it's your sole motivation, at least I was very much aware that I did not want to make it my own prime motivation. So therefore, the part of "I've never been born" resonated more with me, because I could embrace the concept and think about it and contemplate about it without the risk that I saw to lean too much towards the promise of eternal life. Anyway, this poem already brought me a lot, as I just explained, and I wanted to reread the poem. So I googled this sentence. I did. I have never found the poem again up till today. I've looked for it later, but I never found it again. So maybe it somehow disappeared. But that particular sentence brought me to a song. The All-Seeing Eye is the song, and part of the lyrics is, "I have never been born and I will never die." It's a song by Manège de Moor, and I started playing the song on Spotify, and I was instantly fully immersed in the ayahuasca experience, because it's like a standard ayahuasca song. There's all these kinds of songs clustered in a terminology like new age songs or rainbow songs or healing songs, where there's a bunch of different types of styles, all spiritual motivated styles that are featuring during these ceremonies. So all of a sudden I was immersed in it again, and I recall that this friend of mine whom I was with during the ayahuasca ceremony, she said, "You should look for ayahuasca playlists on Spotify so that you can get back to it." And I didn't bother. I didn't take her advice. But by the time, half a year down the line, when I accidentally bumped into one of these songs, I felt like, I have been missing this feeling, because in the end, it was a very positive experience to me. So I started looking for other songs, because that's the beauty of Spotify. Once you are into one song, it suggests other songs from the same composer and related stuff. So I think before I knew it, I had a whole playlist of these kind of songs, which I started playing. And I think by then, the magic of the transformational power of the plant medicine actually started to work. Apparently, I needed to have a half-year period before it could really take off. And soon after that, I bought the full book of Eckhart Tolle, the one that I read the booklet about, and I started reading the book. I still didn't capture the entire book, but at least I understood much more of it than a few years before. So to me, it felt like I was gaining some insight on how this worldview actually looks like and what it entails. And of course, I fanatically started listening these songs. I recall my partner. Uh, at one moment in time, I was cooking in the kitchen and I was listening to my songs, and she was entering the room. She came from outside and she was like, "Oh my God, are you now also listening to these songs while cooking? Where is this going?" And I was like, "I'm just listening my favorite music. It was my new favorite music. It still is up till today." Um, but she was like, she is from a Christian background, and she's still active in this religion. And I always look down at that from my conventional worldview. I even have said to her once, like, one day in time, you will realize that this is all uh, 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 just a tale. It's not real. That's how I perceived her spiritual relationship with Christianity. And then she was like, "Okay, fair enough. This is my piece, and you're apparently not interested in it." And then I came in with my spiritual behavior, bringing in the music, telling all kinds of stories. And she was like, "Oh, wait a minute. You were always dismissing me and my spirituality, and now you're entering with 100 miles per hour with your own spiritual development." So she was a bit hesitant at start, and that was also reflected by this comment about my music playing all the time. But uh, I think after that, we increasingly found a way to merge our spiritual paths, and but I think this music also at the end made a connection to Kundalini Yoga, because one of the artists that was featuring in my playlist was Snatam Kaur. And I recall that she had a turban, because that was on the cover of her albums. And I was looking up. Usually, I was looking up the texts that they were chanting in the mantras, and I realized that they were chanting some Gurmukhi texts related to old Sikh scriptures. But that was all kind of strange abacadabra to me, because I didn't really know what Sikh religion was about, or what these turbans were doing, or what the Gurmukhi script was saying. But the English or Dutch translations of these scripts, they resonated with me by that time, because I was getting more and more into this new concept of perceiving reality.
Just to
Yeah.
recap, and then we'll jump into that Kundalini part. Right? So from having this little crack into ayahuasca, it was the music that did its work
In the end, yeah.
before, and then you start to comprehend it through diving into the meaning of the text. But prior to that, it was actually the vibration of the music that did something to you, correct?
That, I think, definitely that's the key factor that pulled me into Kundalini Yoga. Yeah.
Tell us about the discovery of the vibration in the Kundalini yoga.
Yeah, I recall that the first song of Snatam that entered my list, because I was just listening all kinds of new songs, and then when I really liked them, I added them to my list. And I think indeed, what made me like or dislike a song is indeed the vibration and the energy that is in the song, because I couldn't capture the texts, and I was not going to look for the meaning up front. Only after entering a song to my list, because it resonated, and listening it for a few times, I started getting curious. What are they actually singing? But the meaning, the whole, yeah, the energy of the song was already digested and resonated. So the first song of Snatam that entered in my list was Om Namo. I think it's also her most listened song on Spotify. And I just fell in love with the song without really knowing what it was about. I mean, she does have some English phrases in her song, which really helps, because it can capture some of the essence. But other than that, it's also just, yeah, the whole sense and feeling and vibration of the music. And I started to listen more and more, particularly on her music. And then I thought, well, since this is my new favorite music, and Snatam apparently is my new favorite artist, I'm looking forward to go to a live concert. So I was looking up on the internet It was already in pandemic time, so I wasn't expecting any tour anytime soon, but I was just curious to see where she was from, whether she was ever touring in Europe. And then I saw that she had been playing at some festival, and this festival was called Kundalini Yoga Festival. And I even recall that I was a bit frustrated. Like I was still had a skeptic view towards yoga. So I was like, come on, can she just not feature in a normal festival? Should it be a yoga festival? But then I realized if I ever want to see her play live, apparently I have to go to a Kundalini Yoga festival. So let's look up on the internet what Kundalini Yoga actually is. And then I started Googling what Kundalini Yoga is. I didn't have any clue. So I just entered, I think, on the Wikipedia page. And then it describes it's the yoga of consciousness, and it's a profound method to walk towards a wider conscious experience. And those were all the things that I started to appreciate as my path and my destiny because of the book of Eckhart Tolle that I read. So basically, if people would ask me did you take from the book of Eckhart Tolle, I would say I want to expand my consciousness, because then I would reach the state of calmness, which we discussed before. And then Wikipedia told me that there is a vehicle towards consciousness expansion, and apparently it was some kind of yoga, Kundalini yoga. And it was the first time I realized that this meditation path was not the only path towards a widened conscious experience.
And
And
Corona did that to you. You
well,
had
yeah,
all the time to sit home, listen to music, to
yeah, maybe,
Google
yeah,
around.
yeah. Oh well, it was in earthly context. It was quite a busy time because we had two young children who were not allowed to go to daycare. So it was an intense time, but there was plenty of time to listen to music and to go to Wikipedia to see what Kundalini yoga means. And I remember as soon as I read this phrase on Wikipedia about Kundalini yoga, I realized this is what I'm going to do without any doubt. I didn't have any second thought about my negative connotation with yoga, because I thought apparently this is another way that would lead me to a wider consciousness experience, and I don't have to do the meditation path, which I started to not feel too comfortable with, and it didn't really lift off anyway for years. So that I already knew that was not going to be my path, and all of a sudden there was an alternative route towards where I wanted to go. And I recalled it was the path that would bring me more of these beautiful songs that I started to appreciate. Because, and I recall that finally when the lockdown was over and I was able to join my first Kundalini yoga class, the song of Om Namo of Snatan was played during the class. And
Oh, what a coincidence.
yeah, of course. So that was like, and she literally sings in that song something around something about coming home. And I'm coming home. That's what she's repeatedly singing. And I was sitting in this class doing all these strange moves that I was like, okay, I'm still not too comfortable with the yoga part, but apparently the whole concept behind it is really resonating. And then her song was played, and she sang like I'm coming home, and I really felt I was coming home. I was in a basement of a Rotterdam yoga studio doing all these crazy moves and holding your arms for 5 minutes like this and then for 6 minutes like this and whatever. uh, I felt so proud and self-assured sitting in this funny basement doing all this crazy stuff, but it was actually maybe for the first time in my life that I really did something that I chose to do, and it was against all odds, against all paradigms, but it felt like this is my way, this is what I am here to do, and
Which
that
you
really felt
actually,
powerful.
wait, so I just need to go back a little bit. But you said something. When I read that sentence, this is a yoga to grow your consciousness. You knew.
Hmm.
At that moment, you already knew. I don't know whether you said you knew. You didn't
Yeah,
have the experience yet. You knew. It
yeah.
wasn't, you didn't say, I'm going to test this.
No, I was fully sure, and of course towards the outside world I said like, okay, I'm going to take a lesson, But I already knew I'm going all in. This is what I'm going to do. This will be my route. I was pretty sure 1 second after I read it on Wikipedia, and I've
If you
never
now
doubted.
reflect on that moment, what gave you that insight? How did that work? Did you think of it? What happened?
No, I was not really thinking, because probably if I would have rationally analyzed it, I would go into the more nuanced way of let's give it a try. I might like it or something like that. But that was not
Yeah.
that was not the feeling that came. I think somehow this sentence of Kundalini yoga is a profound way towards increased consciousness. It somehow clicked into my mind. I had the music, I had the plant medicine experiences, and I had like the perspective of a calm and peaceful mind, which Eckhart Tolle gave me, but there was nothing in between. I knew about the possibility of such a thing as reaching a calm state towards through increased consciousness. And through my experience with plant medicine, I took that as a serious potential way to for your life to unfold. Otherwise, I would have probably dismissed it as bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
But so I knew it was a possibility. I only did not have any clue how I could ever cross that path or go on that journey. And by the time I read it, I thought like this is my future. It was as if you were wondering, I need to go to the other side of the country, and it's in the middle of the night, no trains are coming, and all of a sudden a car parks in front of you, and then you're
Here's
not
the car.
doubting. Yeah,
Here's the
here's
car.
the car, drive it.
Okay,
So
okay. So you drove and you got into the Kundalini Yoga Club instantly, or did you after
yeah,
that?
well, pretty soon, because through this blog post of Jasper, I ended up at the Kundalini Yoga Club, and then I was in this new car. I sometimes call it my vessel. Kundalini Yoga is my vessel on my spiritual journey, and I had to know the how this vessel works. What are you supposed to do, etc. And that's why I was so receptive to all the guidance from Jasper in the Kundalini Yoga Club environment. Like do it daily, do it for 40 days, the same kriya, and then a new kriya. All those things, I took them for granted, because I was like, okay, I know this is my vessel, but I don't know how the vessel works. So tell me how it works, and I'll run with it.
And Jasper, some of them, maybe some people don't know Jasper, but Jasper is the birth name of Guru Gyan.
Hmm.
He listens to Bo, by the way. So he seemed like a person who had done it before and who knew how this vessel worked. And
Yeah,
what have you done with Jasper? Tell us, because this podcast is, I don't want to take it too long, but can you shortly tell what you have done with Jasper?
yeah. Well, first I read his ebook. I subscribed to the Kundalini Yoga Club. I started to do his kriyas on a daily basis. So my family got used to me sitting in front of the laptop with a man with a big beard and a turban explaining what I should do. And even my kids were like, if I still recall one moment in time that there was a quite complicated kriya, and Jasper was into sort of particular movement, and I was doing it not right. So my 3-year-old was bowing over me, and she's like, "No, that's not how it should be. Look at the screen." So he, so in a way, he also became a familiar face into our daily family life through this Kundalini Yoga Club footage. And then I also saw on the website that there was something like a yogi for in a day, where you could have a 1-day experience. By that time, it was still with Guru Gyan. So I went to Amsterdam for such a day, and I was when I met him, and then there were a morning session of intense kriya and an afternoon session of an even more intense kriya. And I recall I had a muscle ache in my pains for 3 days after, so that was a good initiation. And later on, I went on a retreat, 4-day retreat in the Netherlands, and I got more immersed into the daily practice of group sadhana, and all guided, of course, also by Guru Gyan. And then after that, last year autumn, I subscribed to the program of Master of Two Worlds, where we briefly touched upon before. And that basically the purpose of that was to uh, make a transformation both in your internal world, let's say on your spiritual journey, as well as in the outer world. And that was last year, so it ended in July, like almost half a year ago. And that really, I think for the internal transformation was more subtle, but in the external transformation was quite concrete, because it was one of the triggers, the main trigger, I would say, to start my own business and to phase out my work on the payroll within a company. I'm in the last process of phasing out. Actually, this week is my last working week for my employer, and from there on, I will be fully self-employed, and my business is going very well. But that's definitely something that was triggered by this program that I did with Jasper, and that consisted of 7 full days where we were invited at his place. So we were having sadhana at his place, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in between, we had all kriyas and other types of activities to trigger you to go into this transformation. So I really got to know him well in that time. And actually, he also became the first client of my new business in a funny way. So that was also a nice way to close the circle, because it was through his program that I was energized to make this transformation. And when I was setting up my business, he was the first one to see the potential and tap into it with his own questions.
And what's your business, and what did these spiritual sessions do with that business initiation?
But yeah, the business is about supporting organizations to absorb and integrate artificial intelligence technologies in their field of work. So currently the most well-known is ChatGPT, but there's other technologies as well. And many organizations are like, okay, we know that there's something going on with artificial intelligence, but we don't know how to apply it within our field of work. So I play a role in telling them what are the possibilities, and also implementing the possibilities together. This is not particularly a spiritual venture. So the trigger for this particular topic was not in the program, but the very fact that I was ready to start up my own business is a direct result of what we have created during this year program. It's a lot
So in
about.
a way, you chose to master your own career instead of working for a master.
Definitely. And also the self-confidence that is needed to take this step. The uncertainty, because we just bought a house, we didn't have any money left on our bank account for savings. So financially, it was a very uncertain time to take this step. But the program was all about going out of your comfort zone, going one step beyond you were able to think before. And actually, the whole idea about this business was created during one of these days that we were with Guru Gyan. I recall that we were doing sadhana and some seed was planted, and throughout the day, during the different exercises, I started to shape this idea. And by the time the day was over, I drove home and I called my partner and I said to her, "I'm going to start a business." So within this one day, from the first idea of setting it up towards the determination of actually doing it. And I recall the next Monday I went to the Chamber of Commerce and I subscribed, and the rest is history.
Wow. So you're still beginning, right? With Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah, I think maybe to make a reference to the title of the podcast of Kundalini
Yeah,
Awakening,
yeah.
what I really like about Kundalini Yoga, maybe, but at first I didn't really like it, but now I really started to appreciate it, is that it's a very gentle, step-by-step process of awakening your Kundalini energy. And maybe at first you feel like, I mean, all our world is full around excitement and highlights. So you want to have this Kundalini energy, whatever it might be. You might not even know what it is, but you want to have it fully flowing. But now I realize that the Kundalini yoga is such a refined technology to like unleash it very gradually, step by step. So whatever additional capabilities you encounter during the ride, you're also able to integrate them and apply them in a good way, instead of getting frustrated or overthrown by anxiety or whatever, because it's a very powerful energy. But if it's unleashed in an uncontrolled way, it can also harm you a lot, because you just don't understand what's going on. And I think one of the metaphors that Guru Gyan gave was that he said it's like shaving or polishing away your ego with sandpaper. So one slow uh, um, brushing at a time. And even now, when I do the sets, when there's, for example, a breath of fire, kriya of 3 minutes or so, I do realize that every breath of fire that I take, every single one of it is one of these polishing movements with the sandpaper. And sometimes for months you don't even realize that something's going on, but then for a while you have a wider perspective and you see that things are changing. So to get back to your
Has your partner and your kids noticed? Are they saying anything about
yeah,
your
yeah, well, the
spiritual
kids
path?
the kids are still young, so they definitely see that when I'm just out after the morning sadhana, I'm relaxed. And also the oldest one gives me feedback like uh, when I'm not in tune or not relaxed, she says like you're really mad at this moment, so you should not behave like that. So there's some connotation there. She at least has the terminology also to reflect on my behavior, which is very very welcoming and useful for me. And with my
She's
part
pointing you back to the yoga. Go back to that man with the beard.
exactly. No, yeah, not literally, but that's basically what she's saying. Yeah, and my partner, with her, definitely, I think we have basically decided to embark on the spiritual journey together, because she had her journey. I accidentally came in with my journey with a lot of energy and fuzz around it, and now we kind of merged our paths and are on the path together. And in terms of how we relate to each other, definitely a lot has changed, and I think our relationship has become a much more healthy. But there's still a route to go for us. But um, we are in a better place than we were a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure we're moving towards the right direction together.
Thank you so much. Wow. I think a lot of men we in our club we have more women, right? They somehow more connected with the spiritual calling, but not men might look at it from a much more rational, earthy point of view, which you just
Mhm.
described, right? If I don't see it, I don't believe it. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for sharing that, because it is possible that you do both. You can do things manifest in the world like AI, so business, helping business to improve, adopting technology. But on the other side, you can also have a spiritual journey. It's not the one or the other. Um, because we're also looking in time. I want to close this off. Um, what would you, because you're a man, tell to all the guys that feel like they they have a feeling they're in the rat race? What would you tell them?
We are all looking for our masculinity. I think, especially in our society, what is masculine to do? Making nasty jokes about women, drinking a lot of beer, going out all night, being aggressive. That's how we expose our masculinity usually. But in the end, that's not a fulfilling way to expose your masculinity. If you really want to feel what your masculinity is actually about, I think you can achieve that by going on a spiritual path. Because real masculinity only unfolds in a satisfying way, which also others know to appreciate if you are able to explore that in a safe environment, where you can first get home to yourself and then do a new attempt to expose your masculinity, and you will definitely find out that it's much more appreciated, both internally as well as towards the outside world.
Yeah, that is so well said, Maarten. I have the same experience in a way coming home um, in a Kundalini yoga lesson. I don't think that Kundalini yoga is for everybody. One does Zen meditation, the other one does ayahuasca. But what I do resonate to is that I think we men have been taught to compete, to dominate the world, to build a career at the cost of others. And that is what masculinity has been shown as. Right, even the whole movie world, it's like conquering. But I don't think that that's satisfying or durable. And if you're listening, you dear men out there, if you are looking for a satisfying way to display, come in contact with masculinity, and and a feminine way, also, I think,
Definitely.
uh, I think we're both, and being in contact with both is so much more satisfying. And I wish you luck in exploring the different spiritual tools. There's many tools there. Just if you have the intention to find, you will find. And I want to thank Maarten for sharing his path in, ayahuasca, truffles, Eckhart Tolle, meditation, Kundalini yoga. You see, I went the same way. Whichever way you go, set the intention, give it attention, and it will grow for you. Like you are listening to this podcast. And I want to thank you for spending your time and listening to us. Please share with those that maybe need it, and listen to the other episodes that we did before, and come back for the new ones. Thank you so much. Do take care. Goodbye from the Kundalini Awakening podcast. My name is Sandesh. I was with Maarten, and see you next time.